Hello, so this has been a video that I've been meaning to make for ages. Anyone that's been following my recent story will know that there's a lot going on at the moment with my mum's death and with dealing with my dad's dementia. And I think I am planning to make a video basically going into detail really about how we've been dealing with my dad's dementia more specifically. We were looking after him, but he's now back at his home. You know, he wanted to retain as much of his independence as possible, and we've put things in place. So yeah, I think there's a whole video there talking about, you know, dealing with everything that's been going on, and you know what's been going through my mind whilst we've been dealing with everything that's going on. Because you know, I live a life where I'm constantly, I don't want to say battling my mind, because it's not a battle, you know, I don't want to add fuel to the fire. It's a constant analysis of what's going on in my mind. And, you know, when you're going through hardship, that gives your mind an excuse to, yeah, like have more dark thoughts and stuff. But I'll go into that in another video. But yeah, today what I want to talk about is how I've kind of changed my approach in terms of how I'm thinking about how I'm going about my self-improvement, if you like. And I think it's important in life in general, but especially if you're trying to improve yourself, to be willing to change your approach or change the way you're thinking. I mean, self-improvement is changing your approach to life, isn't it? Changing the way you're thinking, changing the way you're living. And sometimes you need to kind of start again or regroup, you know, to sort of continue progressing. And there's sort of two changes that I want to talk about today in terms of how I've been, you know, looking at and thinking about my self-improvement. One which happened, I think, probably 6 months after I started this current successful period of staying clean from drink and drugs, and one that's happened more recently. But in general, you know, you always want to be sort of adjusting what you're doing and trying new things and thinking about things in different ways to progress, right? Because, you know, otherwise, you know, if you stay the same, then you're going to stay the same. And self-improvement is about not staying the same and improving. But yeah, what I'm going to say in this video, I don't want it to come across as if I'm saying, you know, what I was doing then I now see as wrong, because you'll sort of hear how the way that I approached my self-improvement and my fitness and the way I was thinking about everything and how hard I was on myself, etc., etc., you know, that was correct then. But yeah, I've kind of switched things up a bit now. So I hope I can explain this right. Like a lot of these videos that I make, I have, you know, got a load of notes. You know, you're literally sitting just above my MacBook. I think that's easier. I normally print the stuff out, which I did this time, but you know, I think it's easier. Just put the camera there and I can glance down at my notes, and then I won't forget anything. So yeah, what I want to talk about is basically the idea of, instead of doing everything that's technically possible, looking at doing more what's realistically achievable for me, right? Now, at the beginning of this current very successful attempt at staying clean from drink and drugs, I decided that I was basically going to do all of the things that I knew had somewhat worked for me in the past, although that was very temporary. The main ones really, you know, it's health and fitness and meditation and, you know, doing things that are good for your body, good for your mind, and yeah, keeping you in positive spirits, right? I went through phases in the past where I would run around the block every day, and that would work for a while, and then eventually when you sort of give up running, or you're too tired or too injured to run, you know, that would start the process of falling off the wagon eventually, and then I would end up, you know, taking drugs or drinking again. In terms of meditation, there were times where I would meditate every day, and you know, that seemed to work, but then, you know, eventually your mind will tell you that the meditation isn't working, or you're just too busy to meditate, which is nonsense. It only takes 10 minutes. And yeah, ultimately, when you sort of forget or don't get around to meditating, or the gaps get wider between each meditation session, eventually you end up falling off the wagon. In terms of eating healthily, right? Eating healthily is great. Like, while it's a novelty, you're eating healthy every day and you're feeling great, and then eventually maybe it gets boring. Maybe you just happen to not have as much time and you have the odd McDonald's, and then they become more frequent, and then eventually you end up falling off the wagon. So at the beginning of this attempt, I decided that I was going to do everything every day. All the things that I knew had worked in the past, and a couple of things that I thought would work but never got round to trying, or persuaded myself not to try. And the big one, or one of the big ones out of this bunch of things that I decided to do, was to call myself out. And that's why I started this channel. So, literally I was going full ham, right? Every morning I was waking up, and the standard was that I was getting up every morning, I was going for a walk around the block, I was coming back, I was meditating, writing in my journal, I was having a workout, I was having a cold shower, I was eating healthily, I was going to the gym. Back then I think I was going to the gym every day pretty much, or maybe 6 out of 7 days. So yeah, I was going full ham. And a lot of people that watched the videos back then were saying, I was going to burn myself out, etc. I was overtraining, etc., etc. And I'm not saying that those people were wrong. It was just that my approach at the time was forget all that. And that suited my position at the time, because I was a lazy, drug addict, alcoholic, loser, right? I didn't need to worry about burnout. What I needed to worry about was my mind making excuses for me to be lazy. So I was at the opposite end of the spectrum, right? The risk was that I was going to be too far away from burnout, not too close to burnout. And the way I sort of looked at it, and the way I still look at it, is that your mind will always tap out way before your body, right? You have to be a very strong-minded individual to work so hard that you actually hit burnout. And I'm not talking about when your mind tells you you're at burnout, right? For me, burnout is if you go for a run and you keep running until you die, like, it ain't gonna happen. Like, you're gonna give up because you're tired, or because your legs are aching or whatever, way before you drop down dead. So that was my approach, go full ham, and it worked. Ultimately, up until the point where I started this successful attempt at staying clean from drinking drugs, I was being too easy on myself. I was focusing too much on, relaxing, too much on having fun, and not enough on, turning myself into the best human being that I could. So that's why I needed to go full ham. And ultimately, going from a life where you are being an utter loser and not being able to stop yourself taking drugs and drink, and all the sort of secrecy and lies and going behind my girlfriend's back, going from that to someone that is able to stop themselves doing these dangerous and loser-like things, that is an extreme change. So an extreme change in my lifestyle and in the way that I was thinking about how I approach life, it needed to be an extreme change. So that's why going full ham really worked for me. And of course, calling myself out by making the vlogs that I did back then, because taking drugs for me, I got to the point where I was doing it on my own, in secret, when my girlfriend was doing night shift, etc., etc. So announcing to the world that I've got this big problem, and calling myself out, that was an extreme sort of flip from the norm as well. And just like I was resisting my inner urges to fall off the wagon and stop living this life where I was going full ham with my fitness and stuff, just like that, I was also resisting messages that I was getting from people talking about burnout, talking about overtraining, etc. I'm not saying that they were wrong, it was just, that's where I was at the time. And, the vlogs I was making at that time were very repetitive. They weren't getting many views, but they were really helping me stay on a repetitive, positive, healthy lifestyle. And I was getting messages on a daily basis, only 1 or 2, saying that the videos did help. So it didn't matter to me about the views or anything like that. It was helping me. It was helping 1 or 2 other people. So that was great. But eventually something changed in me, and it was notable, but it kind of crept up on me. That probably sounds like a bit of a contradiction, but it wasn't as if like one day I woke up and it was like, oh, I'm thinking of things different. It was just sort of like, you know, you're going through the motions, and then, you know, in those times where you're sort of reflecting and, you know, listening to what your mind's trying to do to you, I noticed a sort of profound change. And I basically went from, you know, always wanting to take drugs, but just pushing through and, you know, distracting myself with this positive lifestyle. I went from that to genuinely not wanting to take drugs anymore, and seeing taking drugs and drinking alcohol as utter loser behaviour. You know, I still got the urges. I still had times where my mind would fantasize about me going to score some cocaine off my dealer, or, you know, going to get absolutely wasted, especially when my girlfriend was doing nights and stuff like that, because that was the habit that I'd built up. You know, I was still getting those urges, but it was no longer a case of thinking, oh, you know, yeah, that would be a good idea, but, you know, I need to stay on my path. It was a case of, yeah, I've got that urge to do that. My mind is fantasizing about how good that would be, but, you know, that's loser behaviour. I basically saw my whole past of taking drugs and drinking alcohol as, you know, I was a degenerate, I was a loser. And that's a profound change. It was still difficult, it was still challenging every day to stay on this positive path. I still had the urges, but there was a definite like change in the way I viewed those urges. You know, as someone that's trying to give up drugs and alcohol, you know, there's so many failed attempts, you know, over the years, right? And the sort of fantasy, even though, you know, I've been fully able to see that this is impossible, but the fantasy is that you can go to being someone that can just socially have a drink where it isn't a problem, right? But once I had this switch, you know, as far as I was concerned, if I ever had a sip of alcohol again, if I ever had one tiny little bit of any drug again, if I ever had one, you know, bit of a cigarette again, you know, that would mean that I am an utter waste man loser. You know, the idea of sort of it being okay to just have a drink, like, you know, when you want to let your hair down and after a week at work, you know, the idea of being someone that can, you know, enjoy themselves by poisoning themselves, that was just, yeah, to me, that's utter loser behaviour. So I wasn't someone that kind of wished I was able to poison myself with these things safely. You know, that was no longer a desire anymore. But there was still the urges, or there was still times where my mind fantasized about how good it would be to go and sniff cocaine. I still have, you know, those thoughts in my mind now. It's just that, you know, now I'm, you know, way beyond, I believe, ever giving in to them urges. Although I will always acknowledge that if I went too far down those thoughts, I'll always acknowledge that it is definitely possible for me to fall out off the wagon. I think that's important. But yeah, once I'd made this switch, I just saw any sort of use of drink or drugs as utter waste man, loser behaviour. And my standard then really was that I will never be touching a single drip of alcohol, a single, you know, speck of any drugs ever again. So at this point, it was no longer the case that I was doing all these healthy things every day to stop me taking drugs. It was then a case that I am the kind of guy that does these healthy things every day, which then means that drink and drugs are just not an option. You know, that was the difference. And at this point, I felt that I probably could take my foot off the gas a bit with everything that I was trying to do every day. You know, I was still trying and failing every day to do all of these things every single day as hard as I could. But, you know, if you watch those videos, you'll know that one thing that I just utterly failed at was getting up at 7:30 in the morning. You know, that was one of the many things that was, in my sort of ideal day, and I was failing, somewhat every single day. There was just never a time where I'd get everything perfect. And even though I'd got to this point where I felt a switch in the way I was thinking about things, and even though I felt like I probably could take my foot off the gas, I was so scared of me potentially just falling off the wagon or spiraling down to a point where I'd fall off the wagon. I still carried on trying to go full hand with everything and failing every day. So even though I'd switched and now considered potential drink and drug use as utter loser behaviour, and now even though I sort of saw myself as a healthy, fit person that, sees drink and drugs as like not an option, I was still scared of, going down a path or beginning a path that could potentially lead me to the point where I'd end up falling off the wagon. But eventually I did, give in and stop making the daily vlogs. And part of this was that I felt that it wasn't going to be helpful to other people to just see me failing every day. Surely it's going to be more inspiring if I was able to like hit this standard that I'd set for myself every day, and other people watching that would be inspired by it. I felt like the vlogs were kind of potentially showing people how impossible it was to live this life that I wanted to live. So I stopped doing the daily vlogs. Now I want to make it clear that I still believe that carrying on, trying and failing every day to do all these things, I still think that was the right thing to do. Even when I got to the point where I wasn't doing the vlogs anymore because, I felt like I'd be portraying failure too much, I still believe that it was the right thing for me to carry on trying and failing every day, I'm sure everyone's different. I can't say that every single person that is trying to live a sober life would be, right in doing everything that I did. But I was at the point where I'd failed to stay sober so many times over the years, and then, not tried to carry on. I'd fail and then give up. So I think this was really important for me to fail and then keep trying, fail and keep trying, fail and keep trying, however many, hundreds of times that was at this stage in my sobriety. Because I believe that you must not let your failures be an excuse for your mind to justify giving up. It doesn't matter how many times you fail, it's whether you get back up and try again after failing. That's the most important thing. In fact, the most successful people in the world are the people that fail the most. It's just that they keep trying after each failure. And ultimately, failure isn't even a bad thing as long as you keep trying and trying. Fail, keep trying. Fail, keep trying. Fail, keep trying. Because if you live your life like that, then you're going to succeed a whole lot more than someone that fails, gives up. Right? So ultimately, where I'm at now, I'm failing way more than I was when I was making those daily vlogs, right? There's no hope of me getting up at 7:30 in the mornings. Now, a lot of what I've been studying about over the years about sleep does say that some people just are in certain rhythms. So, I'm not an early morning person, but, that's for another day. But yeah, realistically, I'm now living a life where I'm failing way more than I was when I was failing when I was making those daily vlogs, right? And things are maybe potentially a bit worse, or have been a bit worse, very recently, because dealing with my mum's death and my dad's dementia and stuff like that. But I am now living a life where alcohol and drugs are just even more of an utter impossible option for me, forever. And back in the day, if I was honest with myself, I never ever thought that how I am now in terms of how impossible the option of taking drugs are, back in the day, I never ever ever would have thought that I would have got to where I am now. But I still do and always will acknowledge that it would be possible for me to fall off the wagon, and I need to and want to keep that in the back of my mind at all times, to keep me on this clean and sober path. And I want to make it clear as well, I've got no hate or negative thought towards anyone that does drink or take drugs. Yes, if I ever touched a drug or had a drip of alcohol again, I would see that was me being an utter loser waste man. But it's not my place to judge other people. It's just that I got to the point where I can't relate to people that want to poison their body just to make them feel better. Even though for years and years and years and years, I did that to more excess than most people. So let me bring you now on to another switch that has happened more recently. I would say, in the last few months. In fact, it might have been in the last couple of months, to be honest. And I've basically been trying to look at the way I'm approaching life and approaching self-improvement. Mentally, I'm looking at it as if I am now trying to be a winner rather than trying not to be a loser. And this is a concept that you hear a lot in self-improvement and stuff like that, about playing to win instead of playing to not lose. So I now kind of think that it's a right time for me to kind of start again, right? And maybe even do a bit less in the gym and try it a little bit less hard in a way, because I now want to focus on building a consistent lifestyle where I'm ultimately going to be making myself into more of a winner rather than sort of getting away from being a loser. I hope that makes sense. Some of this is really, really hard to explain. Now, maybe this is just my mind trying to play tricks on me, trying to make me be a bit more lazy, trying to make me take my foot off the gas, and it's trying to lead me on a path where I'll eventually spiral back to where I once was. But I'm still someone that analyses what's going on in my mind every day. Just because I'm so far along in improving my life, it doesn't mean that I'm not a bit of a nutter that's got multiple voices in my head every day that all contradict each other, and I'm still listening to what's going on in my head, and I think it's important that I do forever. It's just that I've now got to a point where I fully trust myself to hopefully get to a point where I'm almost doing everything that I was trying to do at the beginning of this journey, but I want to get to a point where that's sustainable rather than it sort of being a battle and, I'm sort of draining myself by almost getting to that point. So that's probably going to involve me taking my foot off the gas a little bit in terms of the volume of what I'm doing. For example, how much work I'm doing in the gym and stuff, and sort of allow myself to do what's realistically sustainable for me on a consistent basis, rather than trying to do what is technically possible, because we're not machines. There is a difference between what's technically possible with the energy and time that we've got, and ultimately what you're realistically going to be able to do. Now, this will involve ups and downs. Life is all about ups and downs, but I think that if I focus on what I can do consistently whilst remaining vigilant and acknowledging when my mind is trying to make me back off too much, but I think in the long run I'll be in a better position, because I'll be able to do more but consistently, rather than doing a load but not consistently and then ending up really flopping for ages and it's sort of leveling out that way. So I'm going to be focusing more on doing something rather than doing my utmost best at everything. But it's a balance, right? I'm coming away from heading towards burnout, as some people will say, but I don't want to go too far and then start leaning towards being an utter lazy waste man, which is my default state if I allow myself to back off too much. So it's going to be a case of playing it by ear and seeing how things go, but ultimately hopefully I'll get to the point where I'm almost doing everything that I know works for me, almost every day and almost as hard as I possibly could, but doing all of that in a more sustainable manner. Because ultimately, I don't want to just not be a loser anymore. I want to actually be a winner and fully leave behind my old lifestyle and mindsets. But of course, always acknowledging my old ways as part of preventing myself from going back to those dark times. So in summary, based on what I believe really has worked for me, I would say if you're contemplating making drastic changes in your life for the better, which I fully advise that you do, then make those changes drastic, especially in the beginning. Accept that you'll probably fail all of the time, but keep going. If you're going to successfully, drastically change your mindset and ultimately improve your life, you're going to have to get used to failing and then trying again. You're going to have to get used to getting knocked down and then getting back up again repeatedly. You're just going to have to keep going and trust the process, and trust that by forcing yourself to keep going, your future life will be better. Eventually, you may, like I did, get to the stage where you genuinely see your past behaviours as utter loser behaviour. And this is a good thing. You may be failing at this point miserably when you compare your current lifestyle to what would be an ideal lifestyle, even though you'll be able to see that it's way better than your old behaviours. And at this point, you may actually believe that you don't deserve your new, cleaner life. And this is a good thing, because it's going to make you more grateful for it, and it will help you not throw it away by falling off the wagon. And at this point, it's okay to feel like you're more dragging yourself away from being a loser than actually leading towards being a winner. But eventually, you might have another mind shift like I have more recently, where you have to basically start believing that you do deserve to be a winner. And you might actually, as long as you stay on your positive path, start believing that it's quite impossible for you to go back to your old ways. And at this point, I believe you should start reframing everything to suit this mind shift. Don't try and get up early because failing to get up early makes you a loser. Get up early because winners get up early. Don't go to the gym because when you were a loser, you didn't go to the gym. Go to the gym because winners go to the gym. And don't eat healthily because losers eat crap. Eat healthily because winners eat healthily. Now, this more recent mind shift is very fresh for me, and it's very much a case of seeing how I get on. And who knows, maybe I made this shift a little bit too late, but I can't change the past. The past isn't real, and neither is the future. All that's real is the now, and I'm very grateful for my version of the now, and I'm just going to keep going one day at a time. So I hope I've somewhat been able to explain what I wanted to in this video, but ultimately it's just a couple of mind shifts that I've noted within myself, and who knows, maybe those mind shifts will relate to some of you guys that are actually trying to improve your life day by day. As always, do let me know what you think about what I've been talking about in this video. Either drop a comment below this video or feel free to get in touch with me more privately. My email address is, of course, in the description. But other than that, massive thanks to everyone who's sat through this video. I wish you good luck with whatever you're trying to do to improve your lives. And now that I'm somewhat getting through what I've been going through with my mum's death and my dad's condition, I'm hoping that I can start putting videos out on this channel a bit more regularly again. But yeah, until the next video, massive thanks for watching.